Today we're making something very special, and it is the cookies for my baby shower. To make these, I'm using my cream cheese cookie recipe, which I absolutely love, and it's super simple to make. We start by mixing together our room temperature cream cheese and unsalted butter, then we add in some sugar and mix on a medium-high speed until the mixture becomes lighter in color. Next, we add in an egg, vanilla extract, and almond extract, and mix that together. Then in a separate bowl, we're combining our dry ingredients. This includes flour, cornstarch, baking powder, and salt. Once that's all whisked together, we're adding it into our wet ingredients, and we're going to mix on a low speed until the dry ingredients are just combined. The dough should be pretty thick and sticky at this point, so we are going to divide it in half and wrap it in plastic wrap to chill in the fridge for about 2 hours. About 30 minutes before we want to roll out the dough, we're going to preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Then we're going to generously dust our counter with some flour and roll out our dough. I like to roll it to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. And then I cut out as many shapes as possible using flour dusted cookie cutters. And then I know this seems extra, but I like to chill the cookies in the freezer for about 10 minutes after this before baking them. It just helps them keep their shape even better. And then while the cookies bake, it's time to work on the royal icing. We start by whisking together our powdered sugar and meringue powder, then we add in our water and some almond extract. You can also use clear vanilla extract if you have a nut allergy. Then we start mixing this on a low speed until the wet ingredients are incorporated, and increase the speed up to medium-high until it reaches stiff peaks. One quick thing to note, I used a whisk attachment. I saw it was pregnancy brain, but I recommend using a paddle attachment if possible. Now after reaching stiff peaks, we are adding in water 1 tablespoon at a time until we get the icing to a soft peak consistency. We're testing it after each addition of water, and we want to see the icing kind of curl back on the spatula like this, but still keep its shape. This soft peak consistency is going to be perfect for outlining our cookies. At this point, we are scooping 1.5 ounces into a small bag and setting it aside. Then we're going to scoop 3.5 ounces into a separate bowl and add water 1/2 teaspoon at a time until it reaches a flood consistency. How I like to test the icing for flood consistency is to lift it up and see how it looks flowing off of the spatula. You want it to be flowing in thick, consistent strands, and you should be able to draw a couple figure eights. And then once the figure eight is drawn, it should dissolve back into the icing or settle back in about 8 seconds. I ended up having to add about 1.5 teaspoons of water to reach this consistency, but it's going to vary batch to batch. Once the icing passed the consistency test, I scooped this into its own bag and then set to work coloring the icing. Now we're using gel food coloring to make each different color, and we're going to make beige, brown, light green, and dark green icing. And we want 1.5 ounces of that soft peak consistency and 3.5 ounces of the flood consistency for each color. I recommend scooping 5 ounces into a bowl, coloring it, and then thinning it out to get it to the right consistencies. And then when all the icing is baked, we're going to cut a really small hole that's like literally 1 to 2 millimeters at the base of each bag before decorating the cookies. The first cookie is my personal favorite, and it is a onesie cookie. It uses the wet on wet technique, so once we've outlined the cookie, we let that dry for about 5 to 10 minutes. Then we flood it and immediately add on the white dots using the white flood consistency icing. And then once the flood has firmed up, we can use the soft peak consistency icing to add on these really cute details. I'm not quite sure what to color next cookie, but it's basically a cartoon cookie. We're outlining our rectangular cookie, filling it with our flood consistency icing, and then we're going to let this firm up for several hours, if not overnight, before using a fine tip edible marker to draw on these cute little faces. And feel free to get creative with the drawings. I made a lion, a giraffe, an elephant, and a monkey. Our next cookie is a baby bottle, and we're using our soft peak consistency to outline it, letting that firm up again, and then using our flood consistency icing to fill in each section. Then we're going to let the cookies rest a bit, and once the flood looks like it's firmed up, we're going to use our soft peak icing to add on some cute dark green squiggles and some little measurement lines on the side of the bottle. I also used the dark green icing to add on a little leaf to the bottle just to stick with the theme. Now this next cookie for me was by far the hardest in the set. It's a baby cookie. And while outlining and flooding it is a breeze and actually is pretty fun, it's the lettering that's so challenging. I didn't have a projector, so I ended up freehanding this, and I made a few extra of these cookies because I knew it was going to be hard, and I highly recommend doing that if possible. I feel like I got the hang of it by like my 3rd cookie, but it still was challenging, and I really just tried to take my time as I piped on the lettering. We're using the soft peak consistency icing to do this, and I recommend just doing this simple basic outline and then filling in the thicker bits. The next cookie in our set is a monstera leaf, which we start with a light green base outline. Then we're going to flood that, and once that has had time to dry, it's time for the second layer of icing. And then for the next layer, we're obviously using our dark green icing. I made some little holes in the leaf to try to make it look a little bit realistic, and I did this in sections so that the cookie would have a little bit more dimension. I really loved how this cookie turned out. I think it's probably my second favorite in the entire set. However, it does take a bit of time to make just because there are those 2 layers of icing. I really have no idea what plant the next leaf would come from. It kind of reminds me of like a tropical fern or something. To be totally honest, it was in the same set as the Monstera leaf, and to me it just looked the most tropical compared to the other cookie cutters. We use the exact same technique as we did on the last leaf cookie, except for we do add some light green details on top, just kind of look almost like veins in the plant leaf. And then our last cookie is a baby rattle, and we're adding kind of like a leopard print to this, so we're using the wet on wet technique. Both of these are flood consistency, and as long as the icing is the right thickness, the dark brown icing should really almost like melt into the beige icing to create one nice smooth look. And then we're going to use our white icing to add the handle to the rattle along with some details. Adding this bow was also a struggle for me. I used the soft pea consistency dark green icing, but in the end, I think it ended up looking pretty cute. These are by no means perfect, but I'm really happy with how they turned out. It's my first set of sugar cookies I've ever made, and I cannot wait to share them at my baby shower.